good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever it is. This is We Read Allegedly. I am Celeste, the awkward one, the forever awkward one. We have John, our token male, and
That's
Squid,
me.
our alleged author.
Hello.
So, today we are talking about Cinder, which is book 1 in the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyers. But before we get into that, Squid, what are you allegedly reading?
Me, I'm allegedly reading, surprise, surprise, a fantasy novel.
Ooh.
What? I'm reading The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne.
Oh, you recommended that one to me because it has a dragon.
Yes. So I'm not very far into it. I'm 60 pages into it currently. It is very Norse in flavor, which is a big fave of mine. I love me
You have
some-
my attention now.
I'm just sitting here going, what does Norse taste like?
A lot of blood.
Tastes like
and a
blood.
little bit
Blood and salt of the sea is what it
of
tastes
blood
like.
and surströmming.
So it follows 3 separate stories, and it kind of switches between them. And one is a mother who is like a warrior that's trying to like get vengeance of some kind, which is kind of like my jam. Another follows like a thrall or a slave that's kind of escaped from his master and is trying to establish himself as like an independent person. And then the rest is like the crowd of warriors that the slave falls into. And so far, for the 60 pages I've read, it's been very good.
So for at least 60 pages, you've enjoyed it, allegedly.
Yes, for at least 60 pages that it has taken me 2.5 months to read, I have allegedly loved it a whole lot.
Well, John, what are you allegedly reading?
Well, for those of you who listened to last month's episode, you knew that I had just finished. Sherlock Holmes and the Shadwell Shadows, the first book in the Cthulhu Casebooks trilogy by James Lovegrove. So now I'm allegedly reading Sherlock Holmes and the Miskatonic Monstrosities, which is book 2 in that series. And where the first book has an incredibly Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, I forget which one comes first. Arthur Conan Doyle, Mr. Lovegrove decides to take a very different stance on this one and puts it in a very Lovecraft voice. He writes in the style of Lovecraft for a good portion of this book.
See,
So-
I might not like that one as much then.
Lady,
I'll
just
hate
read
that.
it.
I have to be careful with Lovecraft fiction because it jacks with your head. And so I can only do so much of it at a time. Well, I am allegedly reading. I just finished a book and I feel like I'm going to vocalize this opinion. I feel like when you were a kid, you got like, you'd finish a book and people would be like, oh, you finished that book. That's so awesome. And this one was an accomplishment. And I feel like I have not gotten the kudos that I deserve for it.
You haven't gotten a pizza party because of finishing
I haven't gotten a
this
pizza
book?
party.
I felt that way after the first time I read the Bible.
So
It's just like, where is all the kudos?
where's all the stuff? So I just finished Dune,
Oh,
which
golly.
is like 25 hours of audiobook. And it was amazing.
Madam, I will stand up and applaud you for that because I have heard that book is dry.
It is drier
Well, it's in
than
the desert,
Arrakis.
so... And there's like, like water is a commodity, so that makes sense.
It's I read the audiobook. I listened to the audiobook. And the audiobook has different people doing different voices. So it's more like an audio drama. But it literally took me, let's see, what does my Goodreads say?
I'm like
It
amazed that 22 hours is how long it was, because I don't know that I've listened to an audiobook less than 22 hours.
It's well, like, yeah, it took me over a month to finish it. And so I've contemplated going on a rant on and making a TikTok just to rant on Book Talk about how you do these things, you finish these books, and you're like, this is an accomplishment, and everyone's like, cool, you read a book. I'm like, no. My next big one's going to be Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, which is 45 hours.
I have also been reading through Mistborn for the first time.
I've never read any Brandon Sanderson.
Let me just say that the way that I had to not throw all of my money at his Kickstarter is...
I've never read any of his stuff, and I had a hard time not throwing my money at his Kickstarter.
Yeah, his world building, as someone that loves world building, like his plot and his stories are not always the strongest, but his world building is phenomenal. Like I've read, I think I was probably like 20 pages into Mistborn, and I was like, I need a D&D campaign in this world.
Squid, you just said that. Can I throw a suggestion at you?
Maybe.
A book suggestion?
Will it hurt?
It's a book,
I don't think so. It's written by a Christian author. I've wrong application here. I have read the first book of the Mistborn series, and there is a Christian author who writes very similarly to Bryan Sanderson. I think you would enjoy. It's the Legends of the Realms trilogy by Thomas Locke. The first one starts with Emissary. Now, when I say he's a Christian author, I'm not...
He is an author who is Christian?
Yes.
I was going to get you to say everything's allegedly on this podcast.
Well, here's the thing. These books are not, hey, there's a Christianity is great, let's save the day with Christianity theme in this, like you would expect from something to the effect of like Robert Peretti or something like that.
You mean Frank Peretti?
Yeah, I meant Frank Peretti, not Robert Peretti. I got Robert Liparulo and Frank Peretti mixed up.
What's the title of the book again?
The first one is Emissary. It's the first book in the Legends of the Realm trilogy.
I cannot read Christian novels with like staunchly Christian messages in them for the same reason that like the last podcast we were talking about being preachy. It's usually just too much for me, but I'm like, I need you to be a little more subtle. Just a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this one is Christian in the same way that The Lord of the Rings is.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Which is like, and I'm pretty sure I've gotten both of you to read this book now, but Art in the Bible.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure.
I loved that book.
John, did you end up reading it?
I did not. It has my attention, but my schedule doesn't allow a whole lot of...
It's only 40 pages. It's like an essay.
Mm-hmm.
So I do suggest it, yeah. But it's Francis Schaeffer, he hits straight to the core of a being.
At any rate, if you like Bryan Sanderson, if you're someone out there who likes Bryan Sanderson, you want something, and you're a Christian, you want something where you know it's not going to cross any boundaries for you, that would be my recommendation. I know you generally do stuff like this on the show, but when someone brings up Bryan Sanderson and it seems like an appropriate venue,
I'm fine with it.
I throw Thomas Locke out there because it's worth recommending. So
I support that.
There you go. Well, moving on, why don't we determine what we thought about the book that we're supposed to be talking about today, which is Cinder. Cinder is the first book in the Lunar Chronicles. It is a YA fiction, and the description on Goodreads says this: human and androids crowd the raucous streets of New Beijing. A deadly plague ravages the population. From space, a ruthless lunar people watch, waiting to make their move. No one knows that Earth's fate hinges on one girl, Cinder, a gifted mechanic and a cyborg. And basically this is a retelling of Cinderella, with it being, instead of fur or glass, it is her cyborg foot that comes off on the stairs. So, John, you've been very quiet about Cinder.
Jeez, everybody wants to start with me in the past couple episodes.
I got messages from John in the middle of his reading of this book.
Oh no, I've not heard that, but okay. So maybe we should start with Squid. I don't care. Somebody other than me who picked the book. Go.
Let's start this. Let's start the podcast out with somebody who likes this book.
Oh.
But honestly,
Squid?
someone has to play me for this episode. So
And I'm going to.
okay, good. This is another book that I borrowed from a friend and then immediately returned to her when I finished reading it. So I don't have all of my notes because I was very bad.
You wrote notes in her book?
No. But I wrote notes and then I put them somewhere and I have no idea where I put them.
Okay.
So I read, I want to say the first 3 chapters in the book. And then I had super busy 3 weeks and ended up downloading the audiobook from Libby
Yes.
because I had absolutely no time in my day to sit down and read because I was editing every day and doing class stuff. So I switched over to the audiobook and I want to say I probably finished Cinder in 4 days. Maybe. I don't know. I yelled about it the whole time in our group chat.
You did. And I have to say, I understand a little bit how in the last, was it the last episode or was it this episode you were talking about Branson getting into the Cthulhu?
Last episode.
I understand how you feel because watching Squid get into this book and enjoying it has been immensely satisfying.
Actually, I don't know that I yelled about Cinder that much, but as soon as I finished Cinder is when I started yelling. And then I haven't stopped since.
You yelled a little bit in getting into it, but then
I think I had a lot of they better not do X, Y, and Z in this book.
yes.
And surprisingly, contrary to most of my young adult fiction experiences, although they did have predictable plot points. I won't say what all of them are currently in case we want to avoid spoilers, but it's not hard to tell where the story is going when you're reading this book. What's gonna be true.
It's based off Cinderella.
Yeah,
so.
it's a pretty classic YA storyline. But there were still a few plot twists that I didn't expect. That kind of oh yeah, okay. And they weren't the giant ones because I saw those coming from page 2, but there were a couple of the smaller ones that I was oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm interested enough to keep going. Let's go. And then they finished book 1 and it was left on such a cliffhanger that I was I need book 2 right now. I need to see what happens. So that's my initial experience with Cinder.
I will say, I've read this book before, but it's not a series I have read often, even though I thoroughly enjoyed the series the first time I read it. But rereading it post-COVID is fascinating.
Yes, I love a good disease. Just in general,
I love a good disease. But legitimately, some of the things that are happening when I read this, it was 2016 the last time I read this, and it's really interesting to take that this is what society is like because of what's going on. Mm-hmm. In addition to the fact that we've had 4 world wars at this point.
Yep.
So, it's definitely was interesting to me. I think that there are definitely characters that I'm go away. Who needs you? My favorite is Aiko.
Kai as a person.
What is his purpose even?
Kai contributes nothing to the story at all, but it's fine.
He's the prince, that's it.
He's the emperor? Excuse me?
He's not the emperor in the beginning of the book.
He's the emperor's son, but he's never a prince, so...
He's the prince character in the Cinderella story.
Kai's last name is MacGuffin.
Don't understand that.
Good.
MacGuffin is a literary tool that serves no functionality in the story other than to make something happen.
Yeah.
its existence has no bearing on what actually happens in a book.
I will give you that.
And I will say, having now I'm in probably 3/4 of the way through the 4th book, which I think is the last one, right?
Other than the short stories, yes.
Yeah, which I don't plan on doing, but he doesn't get better. He does not contribute anything else throughout the rest of the book. He's just there.
He's just kind of there. He is not the best
Kai
character.
is not a strong character. But I will say what I think that Cinder did better than one of my complaints with the Red Queen, which I don't know if it actually made it into the episode, but I feel like Cinder did otherness better than Red Queen did. So, like, Red Queen set up a society in which the people without silver powers, are the other. They're the outside. They're the, the outgroup. But you don't feel it in a way that matters ever in the book. Not once. And at least in Cinder, I feel like there are legitimate and strong prejudices that are put forward that you feel more. Which are, not that they're great, but they are at least more present.
Yeah, the cyborg draft in general was a good tool for that.
Yeah, for sure. Which is like, oh, okay, so this is actually a thing that matters in the book, as opposed to, oh, you're just one of those people that, okay.
Or the fact that Audrey can just, like, go and call the police and go get her because she is considered property, not person. Right.
So I do think there are scenes in Cinder that definitely portray that a lot better. Yeah. Which I think is one of the things that I really liked about it, because I love seeing those if you're going to go with that storyline, you need to portray it well. And not just, like, tell me in the beginning of the book that, oh, well, we're less than these people because of this. And then you never, like, talk about it again. It's like, if I'm not seeing that, then it doesn't mean anything.
I definitely enjoyed the sci-fi element to it. Like, I love a good sci-fi story. And so having the Lunars have a power, even though it's not magic, it's not like the Reds in Red Queen. It is scientific because they were living on the moon. But having that as a thing and having that obvious tension between Earthens and Lunars, and then having the issue with cyborgs and androids, and so, which I think I might have said this a few minutes ago, but I'll say it again. Aiko is my favorite character. She is the best.
You did not, but Aiko is wonderful.
Aiko is amazing.
Aiko is so good. I don't think Aiko is the best character in the books, but I do love Aiko. She's up there. But you know where my heart belongs. So.
Because we've had discussions.
I have 2 people that I would protect with my life. Neither of them need my help.
And they are not in the first book.
One of them is. Jason's in there.
Oh, he is. Briefly. He gets shot.
My boy. He comes back later with a vengeance. All right, John, trash the book. Let's go.
We've said things. You should say things now.
All right. This book, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, ultimately this book, as was the case with Red Queen, was not written for me. I am not the demographic for this book.
As well as, you said that about Enchanted Hour as well.
I was not the demographic. I was not the demographic.
I think you were more the demographic for Enchanted Hour than you were this book.
I full knew that John was probably not going to care for either of these books, but they are great examples of YA fiction.
Takes it off my shoulders for once.
Again, as was with Red Queen, it hit all the young women's YA fiction. The lesser, the have-nots versus the haves, with the quote chosen one dwelling amongst the have-nots, and thus, because she's so special, rises to a thing where she obviously is going to lead some sort of world-changing event that would have never happened had she never existed.
It
actually
is
died
the
in
classic
fire.
trope of YA.
And so it's just going into this and having listened to it, I'm like, oh, good. And of course, because the first book centers around the idea of Cinderella as much as it does,
Yeah.
you kind of have an idea as far as where things are going. They set up the missing slipper very early on in the book with her getting a new foot.
Yeah.
So it's just like, okay, that's going to happen. And as soon as there was the scene where Peony and Cinder, and I can't remember Cinder's android's name.
Ico.
Ico, right? You just got to
How
remember
dare you
that
forget
old song.
Ico?
Well,
Most compelling character in this entire book.
I'm gonna tell you that this book is not super memorable for me, but I digress.
I will say that the first book was also not memorable for me. It gets better.
But the moment those three characters are sitting around going, "Ooh, boys," after Prince Kai visits Cinder's stand, I was just like, all right, I'm not the target for this.
That was also part of my least favorite parts of the book.
I'm like, I can't relate to this. I don't care. I don't. And I spent the whole entire book saying I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah.
I thought the idea of this pandemic virus would make it better for me, but I end it. I mean, I think I probably would have liked this book to, and this will be an interesting counter position to what you had said, Celeste. I probably would have enjoyed this book more pre-COVID. Because right now, as far as pandemics are concerned, I'm done. I'm done.
That's understandable.
I'm so done. And it's just like it has the standard YA tropes throughout the whole entire thing. On top of that, there is the Cinderella message of, I need this man in my life to help me raise out of my current situation, which I don't believe is a healthy message to send young women.
I don't think that line kind of continues in the book though. And I don't think that was strong in the first book either, personally. Because I would have been angry about it.
I picked up on it, but I might have been looking for it too. I don't know.
It is generally a trope, and it was there mildly, but then at the same time, Cinder is set up as a character who feels the need to take care of everyone else. And in later books. And so you really see that she doesn't think she needs a guy, but at the same time, it's still kind of there.
She has feelings for him, yeah.
Right.
I will say, Kai and Cinder are the two least motivational parts of the books, of the entire series. And that's always one of the things that I hate when I read a book, and I'm like, you should have made your side characters the main characters. Why are you doing this?
You said that about 14.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And I meant it just as much then as I mean it now. And not that I think, I don't think I don't think Kai is a well-developed character. He doesn't make a lot of difference and doesn't really matter. And even in his emotional stages in different books, I'm just like, whatever, it's fine. You do whatever. I don't care.
Now, to put my own defense out there, this being my second female-oriented YA book,
that's a lot of YA. Buckle up.
that we've done for this show. Some people might brand me as saying you just don't like female-driven.
I will say they're remarkably unlikable.
Yeah.
Just in general.
And you know, and just to put it out there, I don't have a problem with strong female lead characters. Like one of my favorite games of all time, one of my favorite video games of all time, Horizon Zero Dawn. And Celeste can testify to that, because I will preach that game. And the thing about it is, very strong female character, she needs no man.
True.
Like I totally ship her and Aaron. But you know, she needs no man. Like, and she settles down with no guy, because like she's like, I'm doing my own thing.
Yeah.
And I have no problem with romance either. It's just usually in these YA novels, it feels so shoehorned. It always feels so crowbarred.
It isn't. Anytime I start a YA book and there is a boy mentioned within the first chapter and a half, I'm like, no, thank you.
I do appreciate, though, that, and again, this goes in more into the series rather than this book, but the romance is not the main focus.
Yeah.
It's there. It's a thing, but...
I would say Cinder's romance is not the main focus. I was like, they don't spend a lot of time on Kai and Cinder. They do now and again, but like that's my one thing that I don't like about the series, is that every single book I'm like, oh well, they're gonna end up with them. Oh well, they're gonna end up with them. There's their lover. Okay, like okay. It's all like very Disney cookie cutter.
I'll give you that.
There's their Prince Charming.
But the overall the overarching story is basically talking about dethroning somebody who took the throne by force, including the. I know you said you aren't going to read them, but the Fairest, which fits in between 3 and 4, is an interesting take because it is told from Levana's perspective. And it is some history, so...
I love Levana.
That's fascinating. You would love this then, because it is her story from her perspective. And it explains a ton. But the overarching story is not, oh, let me get with this guy. It is... There's there's crap that needs to happen, and oh hey, there's guys also.
Yeah.
So
that's like my one drawback with a lot of YA is just like, no matter which one you pick up, you kind of know where it's going. And even if like Cinder did have parts in it that I was like, I didn't expect you to incorporate that. I knew where the overarching plot was. I wish I knew what those were.
The ones you couldn't remember?
Yeah, the ones that I didn't write down.
See, Squid, now I kind of wish you hadn't said that.
What?
Because I bought a a box set of a certain YA series now, and now that you have said that, I am super reluctant to open up any of the books in it now.
What's the series?
The Maze Runner.
It's not. The Maze Runner does not follow the tropes.
Maze Runner's pretty different.
Yeah. I didn't realize that YA fiction was a thing until probably the last 2 years when I started listening to like podcasts and stuff. I was just like, hey, look, these kids' books don't have things in it that I don't want to read. Let me grab that. I read all of the Maze Runner books, including the prequels, and it is not normally my jam, but it was so compelling that even though it made me feel gross, I was still reading it.
Made you feel gross?
Have you seen the movies?
I've seen the first one.
Okay. I don't do zombies. I cannot take zombies. I can't.
There's a lot of like interesting overtones in it as well. Like with the one girl. Ooh, just questionable. The first one in the Maze Runner, when they like introduce a woman girl, she's not actually like a woman yet because they're all children, but
oh yeah,
it's got some questionable dynamics that they have introduced to this. But
the moment where they start playing that that Neil Diamond song, "Girl, you'll be a woman soon."
Is like I think Maze Runner sits outside of a lot of the tropes.
Yeah, it does.
And there are obviously other YAs that do as well, but I think the vast majority of them they follow the formula because the formula is easy to read. And it kind of introduces young readers to the idea of storytelling, which is a good thing that I support. Like, I'm a fan of that. I think, when we pick up the books, we're like, oh, this is kind of, elementary, but because it is, like, that's
right.
That is the audience of, like, let's introduce you to telling stories. It's gonna fit the mold of what a classic story is. We're not going to include too many wild things because keeping up with all those wild twists is a little beyond where you're reading. And if you're ready for that, you pick up books that aren't YA anymore. So. And
sometimes you are an adult who likes the wild things, and then you go, I need something easy to read.
Yeah.
Let me grab a YA fiction.
Yeah, like even as someone that knew where this story was going, I have enjoyed it a great deal. The first book was not my favorite.
So let me ask you this. Is Percy Jackson considered children's or YA?
It is,
I think,
YA.
Yeah, I think it's YA.
Yeah.
Okay, so
it's
then
juvenile
I do
fiction in general when it's in the library, so.
YA is a broad thing. Sorry, go ahead.
Then I do like some YA because I like the Percy Jackson. I like most of what Rick Riordan does. I'll put it like that.
And I feel like Percy Jackson kind of follows the storyline too, but it's just not.
It does. It's not as obvious. YA is a generalized, you are meant for this reading ability. And there is even a new, I don't remember what it's called, but it's people who started out writing YA are starting to write things with more adult content in it, but it's the same type of story as YA fiction. And I've stumbled across a couple of those, and I've had to go, I'm skipping. Because Squid and I have talked about that. that there's a couple authors I enjoy, and I will read anything they write. I just skip over large sections of their books.
Yeah. I don't think I have too many like that, but I also don't tend to read a lot of books that delve into happy topics.
Had I realized when I was starting to read these books that was going to be in there, I would not have delved further into them. But because I've already gotten attached to the characters, I have continued.
Do you have any other good things to say about this novel, John?
It's very pink.
It is very pink.
The original one is not very pink. So
I really enjoyed the cover. As someone that doesn't like pink, that was a beautiful cover.
I like the cover because it reminds you that she looks Asian. And
I will also say I did not care for the narrator at all. Her voice was grating on me. It was just
I really liked her.
I found her to be a little shrill.
Interesting. This is the first audiobook I've ever listened to on a sped up speed.
Oh.
Which kind of makes her a little higher in pitch. And I was like, this is great. I love this. I usually listen at exactly the speed, which I know is not a common thing for a lot of people that listen to a lot of audiobooks or podcasts.
But I can't do even like where it cuts the gaps because it makes me anxious.
I don't do cutting the gaps. I think I did like 1.25 speed, so it's just a little bit faster.
Oh, yeah, that just makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, this is the first books I've ever done it for. But I know like a lot of people that listen to podcasts, they were like, I listen to all my podcasts on 1.5 speed. And I was like, what?
Yeah,
huh?
Dallas does that, and it drives me up a wall because I'm like, there's no breaks, there's no breaths. It's what's happening.
I don't know. I found her voices to be at least believable, which is helpful.
She does a very good job of a French accent later in later books.
She does enough differentiation that even if, and in most novels, you know, you're going to get who's talking at a given time because they make it clear, especially when you have 4 or 5 characters in a scene. But she does a pretty good job of differentiating between the voices that she uses and the inflection she uses that I was like, this I appreciate.
Yeah.
On the topic of reading aloud, like our last episode. Good job. You go. But that's like one of the things that we're like, it really depends on what you like to listen to. Because like I enjoyed her voice a whole lot, but clearly you did not. And I probably would not like some of the people that read some of the books you have picked out. I'm very picky about who I hear.
And that's just it. Narrators are kind of narrators are a lot like the books themselves. People come to them for different things, and some people like certain things that other people don't, and that's fine. Like the first time I tried to listen to the book by Dean Koontz, Phantoms, the narrator in it I can't, I won't, goodbye. And I sent it back. I sent it back unfinished. I'm like, I can't do this. This is hot garbage in my ears. I cannot.
Yeah.
So
they've been very, but I don't have Audible, so I don't like buy a book, but I have a tendency to listen to the samples before I download because I need to know if I can listen to the person.
I mean,
because I know I'm picky. I need to. Best audiobook I've ever listened to is still Aragon, though. I highly suggest the series.
Probably need to reread that one or listen to that one.
The audiobook series is very good. Spiritual takeaways? Anyone?
Right. I had one. I wrote it down. Oh,
I wish I'd written it down.
So there was a line in the book, and it's actually one of my favorite lines. And it says, "Denial has run its course until it has nowhere to go." Denial is a part of a lot of things, and you have to get to the point when you are dealing with grief or you're dealing with a situation where you're handling something spiritually, emotionally, whatever, where you let yourself go through that. You just let yourself deny it, and then you move out of it. Like, you get to the end. Some people live in the state of denial, and it's not healthy. And so it's not so much a spiritual takeaway, other than, you have to be mentally and spiritually healthy, as it was this stuck out to me because of things that I am personally working through. And I went, that's a good line, because I've moved past denial. So I relate to this now from a healthy point of view.
And it's a continual process too. Like, you may move past one part, and then you're like, oh, I'm denying these other 3 things that I have not been paying attention.
Oh, look, it's like triples. They all just pop up.
It's like it's a disease that spreads. Kind of like in this book.
It leaves bruises.
It leaves bruises internally on your soul. I think mine would be, if I had to extrapolate far from the story, and I don't now remember if this happens in the first book or because I've binged through all 4 in about 2 weeks. The idea of just like knowing them by their fruit, because it makes it clear that the Lunars can like manipulate appearances and can look however they want. Yeah. But there are a few times throughout the series, and I won't say throughout the first book because I honestly don't remember at this point if it happens in the first book. But throughout the series, even when they're, manipulating people to look differently than they do, that they cannot help their own personality still coming through.
Yeah.
Because they're still going to be themselves no matter how they look or they present themselves. So it's the idea of like evaluating the fruit rather than just the appearances on the outside.
Well, and even then, for Lunars, they go mad if they don't use the gift.
Yeah.
And so you see a few characters throughout the series, specifically in the first book, you see Dr. Erlon, who chooses to not manipulate people. And so he is choosing madness rather than...
Celeste.
What? We've been in spoilers. Chooses madness rather than do something that goes against his conscience.
Right, which is a big topic of one of the later books.
Yeah.
Very strongly. Yeah. Just the idea of like, even if it can be harmful to you, there's no justification to hurting another person.
Yeah.
You can't exert control over someone else just because it makes it easier for you.
We do not support harming yourself.
No.
But
very different. Like, it's
very
a very
different.
different topic than
just throwing that out there in case
Please
anybody misheard or misunderstood.
If that is the thing you are thinking, reach out to us, talk to us, and we're going to talk to you. Like, don't do that.
Yeah.
But the idea of, you know, using the power you have and the control over other people is not okay. As opposed to, you know, letting that be a thing that you need to deal with on your own.
Yeah.
But don't hurt yourself, please. Don't support that. Not a message that is supported by We Read Allegedly.
Or Geek Devotions.
Or Geek Devotions.
Or playing games. None of us.
Like, none of us support this. We're not okay with it.
Although if you want to hurt your D&D character, playing games will fully support that, because
D&D is a great place to get out all of those feelings.
Frustrations.
You should see how I
hurt other people's D&D characters, so.
You do. Okay. Well, that was our opinions on Cinder. Next time on We Read Allegedly, we will be talking about Night Film, which is going to be an interesting conversation. So,
that book is the reason why I started this podcast in the first place, or the reason why I pitched it, rather, to Celeste and Dallas to create, because I needed somebody to talk to about that book. So all the talking will happen on the next episode, and you get to hear it. Aren't you excited? Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the things.
Our website.
Don't forget our website. We have a website. Also, don't forget to check out our other stuff that we do, the Playing Games with Strangers, all the Geek Devotions things. Squid has podcasts and books and things, and so does John. So all the things. Check us out on all the things.
Just like a giant tree.
Real quick, I would recommend to all our listeners, listen to or read Night Film by Marissa Pessel before we get to that episode, because there's no way to talk about that book without talking
spoilers.
without spoilers. And I need to talk about that book. I need to talk about that ending. So go. You have homework. Do it.
Go read. You have a month.
Go read.
We'll see you on the first Friday. Bye.
So long.
Bye.
And thanks for all the fish.
We Read Allegedly is brought to you by the Devoted Geek Network, devoted to letting you know that you're loved. Join us every first Friday as we read and review a new book. You can find us on Twitter or Instagram at We Read Allegedly, and we want to hear from you. We'll see you guys next time. I've never seen that happen.
Do I need to kill another one of your characters?
Please
Squid?
don't.